Thank you, Professor Mutwa and Professor Lloyd, for your kind words. And thank you to the deans, the deputy vice-chancellors, fellow academics, management of the university, for being here tonight and for all the support and all protocols observed in case of the welcome. Although the Vice-Chancellor extended a word of welcome and thanks to all in attendance here this evening, I think it would be improper of me not to add a personal touch. To all the people here tonight, and let me just say thanks for showing up. I appreciate it. On a professional level, I'd like to thank the senior management of the university, specifically Professor Leach, in terms of research and engagement for awarding me this professorship. Thank you very much. There are 6 professors who I would like to thank for their contribution to my academic journey. From the business school, there are 3 who all had a positive impact on my career as an academic. None of them are here, I don't think, but I'd like to mention them in any case. Firstly, to Professor Kobus Jonker, who employed and as director of the graduate school, and sometimes of the business school as well, has been extremely supportive, but more importantly, steered the business school to the great heights it has achieved and given me a wonderful environment to work in. The other 2 directors of school that I would like to thank for their research guidance specifically and support are Professor Piet Nordier and Professor Steve Burgess, the one at Stellenbosch University and the other one at Wits, so couldn't be with us tonight. Both of them excellent researchers, academic leaders, and great mentors for me in my career. The 4th professor and I have never worked together. We got as close as supervising a doctorate together, but I would like to thank Professor Helena van Zyl from Free State Business School for always being so supportive. Number 5 is Professor Gideon Moss, who is currently at Coventry University in the UK. He was my doctoral supervisor where we worked in family business. And then number 6 is the professor who I think has made the most contribution and impact on my growth as a researcher. This is Professor André Karlitz. He's been a fantastic mentor, a role model, and a hard taskmaster. But thank you, I thank you all. I'd also like to thank my colleagues as I look around the room. Thank you for all your support over the years and your contribution to my journey. To Dr. Fenter, who can't be here tonight, thank you for all the assistance with the statistical analysis of my work. Willing and capable students facilitate research. And as Professor Lloyd commented, I have supervised a substantial amount of students, and I'd like to thank them for their contribution to my career and research outputs, but more importantly, being willing to explore exciting areas of knowledge that might not be mainstream. Then, of course, on a personal level, I'm very blessed to have my mom and dad here, as Professor Mutwa mentioned. I think it's always clever to have your parents at an event like this because they'll think you were marvelous whether you were or you weren't. So, but thank you for being here and thank you for the value that you've added to my journey. I'm also very blessed with special friends and I'd like to thank them. Some are here tonight, some aren't. To Leanne, Archie and Paula, Stan and Minky, Lynn and John, Olga and Elisha, thank you for your support and your friendship over the years. Last but not least, I would like to thank my stepson, Martin, and of course my husband, André Carlos, who, as you know, has a multifaceted role in my life. He's my fellow researcher, my best friend, and the love of my life. Thank you. So, my academic journey started 15 years ago when I joined the business school coming from commerce. And the main reason for that transition was that I felt I would like to do a doctorate. And so my pilgrimage of research started in family business. My doctoral work focused on family businesses in the wine industry, where we looked at the points or the things that ensured good succession. And so I spent weeks in the winelands, visiting a lot of wine estates. As Prof. Nadia always used to say, you always pick the best topics, but anyway. And all this time I spent in the wine industry or the wine lands made me happy. Working at the business school has given me an opportunity to do research in a number of fields, be it marketing or entrepreneurship. And I just want to highlight one topic. I think it changed the way that I work. It was a specific group research project. And being a concerned but proud citizen of Nelson Mandela Bay, it led me to conduct a large study on destination marketing. And it was based on the Metro. And together with Professor Stiglitz, we supervised a group of 6 students who looked at the issues around Nelson Mandela Bay because it had an identity crisis. And we worked on this with different angles. And one of the papers that came out of this research was awarded the best paper at the 13th International Marketing Trends Conference in Venice in 2014. We had a good bunch of students looking at issues around residents. What did they say? I see the new head of tourism here. I will share this with you because I think it will be a big help. But this whole idea of working with a group worked very well. That's the team. There are some of them here tonight as well. But apart from the research on the city and a lot of my other research, there's been a simple common theme. And that theme has been happiness. Happy residents, happy customers, happy employees will make you successful in whatever you do. So the concept of happiness is, it might appear elusive or fuzzy, to use a maybe more descriptive word, but it's been extensively researched by philosophers and historians, and most of them agree that the concept of happiness in antiquity centered on good luck and fortune, something beyond human agency and therefore controlled by the gods. Today, happiness is viewed as something over which you can have control and something that can be pursued. So just to quickly have a look at mentions out of religion. As you can see, the Quran doesn't regard happiness in this life as important, but what matters is your happiness in the afterlife. There are also some Christian writers who believe that happiness in the afterlife is all you need to pursue, such as Augustine, and then mentions of happiness in the Bible, where in the Psalms it says, happy are those people whose God is the Lord. So this concept of happiness has been debated over many, many years, and one of the leaders in the work of happiness was Bentham, a utilitarian philosopher, who in 1789 said that the truth is that it is the greatest happiness of a number of people that is the measure of right and wrong. And so this whole concept of happiness comes through very strongly, but still in a very sort of philosophical and possibly not scientific way. So if we look at how we define quality of life, and this is what Bentham said, he said that happiness is really the sum of pleasures and pains. And in other words, it's how well do you like the life that you lead, be it on a personal level, on a national level, or in this case, specifically in the workplace. Of course, we can't talk about happiness and not mention some of the Greek philosophers, where we've got Aristotle talking about happiness being the goal of human thought and action, Socrates, as you can see, and Plato saying that happiness is the highest aim of moral thought and conduct. So this whole pursuit of happiness runs right through all the literature. John Locke, very well known for his phrase coined, the pursuit of happiness which is in the American Statement of Independence, and I'll get to the South African one in a while. But if we look at the work done by Viktor Frankl, who spent years of his life in concentration camps, his whole thinking was you have to have a reason to be happy. And so the writing continues, but I thought it would be good to have a look at some literature. And Robert Louis Stevenson, I know, will be known to all of you for his Treasure Island and so many books. And he said this in A Child's Garden of Verses, that the world is full of a number of things. I'm sure we should all be as happy as kings. One of my favorite poems is the If poem from Rudyard Kipling, where he says, if you can dream and not make dreams your master, if you can think and not make thoughts your aim, if you can meet with triumph and disaster and treat those two impostors just the same, if you can bear to hear the truth you've spoken twisted by knaves who make a trap for fools, or watch the things you gave your life to broken and stoop to build them up with worn-out tools. What he's basically saying in a reflective manner is really that things will go wrong. They'll go wrong in personal issues, they'll go wrong in the organizational space, but we have to resign ourselves that we can't prevent these things from happening, but it's about how we deal with them. The academic world started working in happiness, and one of the longest studies has come out of Harvard University in Boston. It's been going on for 75 years, where they have surveyed two groups of people from different backgrounds, and the work resulted in this conclusion. The work is still going on. Robert Waldinger heads up this Institute for Research, and the whole crux of what they have found out is that good relationships are the things that keep you happier and healthier over your life, whether it be within or out of the work environment. The Happy elective at Harvard, the happiness course, is the most popular course that Harvard University has ever run. Berkeley, UCLA, thank you, Guy, launched their first course on the 4th of September, which is Monday, which is called the Foundations of Happiness at Work, where they will teach people why happiness is important at work and how to actually improve this in terms of making happiness your business model. So as I said, there's been a lot of philosophical speculation about the happiness with very little empirical measures, or very few empirical measures. And I think this is why the body of knowledge has been so spread across, possibly out of the mainstream academia, because, you know, how would you define happiness? What does it mean to you? And so how do we actually make this a scientific process? But Veenhoven, who's a Dutch researcher, one of the biggest writers in the field of happiness, has been a great contributor to the measures that we actually used. And they've come from the social sciences. So we have significant things that we can measure, and that's what my research has been about. We also have happiness economics, and I know there are a lot of economists in the room. I look at Prof. Lloyd, I look at Prof. Waite, and most of your big writers in happiness actually are professors of economics. They've come up with a lot of criticism about the way we measure things in the world. So what happened with the economists is they got together with psychology and sociology. I think that might be quite scary for, for some of you, but the combination of that, they've started questioning how we measure things in the world. And the one thing that has specifically come under severe criticism is the gross domestic product. They're saying, is this really a measure of showing what the country looks like? So one of these economists is Joseph Stiglitz. He won the Nobel Prize for his work in happiness in 2001. And between him and Easterlin, they've had a lot of, or done a lot of work, conducted a lot of research in terms of putting happiness in as a measure rather than the GDP. Because as Stiglitz says, what we measure informs what we do. And if we're measuring the wrong thing, we're going to do the wrong thing. So this has resulted in a lot of countries looking at policy and looking at the measures that they use to determine the well-being of their country and their residents. So the call has been for a new measure in terms of saying, let's look at people differently in terms of countries. So if we have a look, Bhutan is one of the main leaders in the work on happiness. It's a really small country, and people will say, well, nobody even knows where it is, so does it matter? But they pioneered the national work in happiness and have very, very positive results. The United Kingdom called for a study on happiness before, they normally call for it before every election time, because it gives them a very good gauge in terms of what the residents are saying. If we have a look at the United Arab Emirates, they have a ministry for happiness, where they've appointed, Andre said to me, why is this slide so full? I said, because their names are so big. So, but their whole purpose is to promote happiness and a positive attitude in government and life, with the vision of being amongst the happiest countries in the world. They're sitting just above ranking of 10, and they have brought in a lot of initiatives through government where there are happy policies, there are happy centers, they have an incredible amount of initiatives that they're doing. And as I said, their mission is to have happiness and positivity as a lifestyle and the higher purpose of government. So they see that as their most important role. We, of course, can't ignore South Africa. And the South African statistics do not look that good. We are sitting in 105th position. I think it was out of 140 countries that were measured. And we are declining. So I think something has to be done in terms of making this change. The World Happiness Report is a report that happens and gives us these rankings of countries around the world every year. And this is what they measure: social support, gross domestic product as per capita, absence of corruption, presence of social freedom, generosity, and a healthy life expectancy. The top countries in these reports are normally the Scandinavian countries. It normally swings between Sweden and Norway, which makes it very, very interesting to have a look and see what they are doing to get it right. It's mentioned in the South African Constitution, where it says that the promise that all South Africans would be guaranteed the unalienable rights of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So it's also something that is acknowledged, but as I don't think is very well implemented. So we all know that money can't buy you happiness, unless you know where to shop, of course. But in this case, in South Africa, neither can sunny skies and boerewors. They don't seem to be making that difference as well. So the pursuit of happiness that I mentioned from Locke as a writer shows itself in the South African Constitution, but it's also enshrined in the French Constitution, and it's enshrined in the United States Declaration of Independence. In 1968, Robert Kennedy said this. He said, "The gross national product does not allow for the health of our children, the quality of their education, or the joy of their play." So are we really measuring the right things? And as I said, in South Africa as well. So this field of happiness, fuzzy, I think probably provoked a lot of amusement in academic areas in the beginning. We used to call it well-being economics, but nobody understood that. And so the name was changed to the late term of happiness. And it is one of the biggest growing areas of research in the academic world. In current times, business and institutions are asking the following important question. How can we create value? How can we competitively compete while identifying and pursuing opportunities? If you look at the innovative startup businesses, and not those that are not startups anymore but have progressed, so companies like Zappos, Southwest Airline, they believe that making happiness your business model is the answer. Choosing happiness before profit has made these and many other companies extremely profitable, whilst developing a strong culture in the organization as well. And this, of course, supports the national happiness measure as opposed to the gross domestic product measure. With all this going on in happiness, a couple of years ago, first of all, my first lot of work in happiness was with Professor Venter, where we had a look at happiness as how did happiness affect students' entrepreneurial intention, because there's a great link between entrepreneurship and happiness. And that was sort of where I started to dig with the work in happiness. But then looking around the world, everybody measures things differently. So you'll get this happiness report and that happiness report. So I contacted the OECD, and our discussion included the lack of a standard measure for measuring national happiness or happiness within business. So I did some further exploration, and with my position in the business school, I realized that very little work had been done in professions and in different sectors of the economy. So I decided to embark on an exploratory journey to look and see if I could develop in research teams a model for happiness that people could actually adopt into their businesses. So with different professions and with a lot of my MBA students who all come from different walks of life, we've managed to do some extensive research, which is what I'm going to share with you tonight. But it's not only about countries, it's not only about the philosophers. Coke had the Happy Factory, which I'm sure you'll all remember, and they drove the whole concept of happiness very strongly with their brand, and I think that the time that they did this was also very, very important. So if we look at that in terms of from religion to philosophers to poets to the academics to the economists and to brands, there's a definite growth in terms of the work that has been done in this area. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of new thinking in terms of business, and people are making happiness their business model, because if you've got happy employees and happy customers, you can't do anything but win. Bernd Schmidt, in his book, he writes about happy customers everywhere, with some good marketing research to support that. So as I mentioned, how do we define it? It's the degree to which an individual judges the overall quality of their life favorably, the sum of pleasures and pains from Jeremy Bentham, and how well you like the life you lead. And as you all know, work has a tremendous impact on your happiness, because unfortunately you spend a lot of your adult life there. And so if we can make that work experience a better one, where people are happy and they feel valued, it makes common sense that the output would be great productivity, a better organization to work with. So measuring happiness in the professions and sectors is most of the work that I've done together with students and with research partners. And we've identified a lot of variables which we've tested, the first one being workplace influence, where people are allowed to make their own decisions, they have autonomy in their positions at work, and they have a say over which tasks get performed as well as how they are performed. So it's all about, I'm going to say in inverted brackets, but empowering people. Workplace social relationships links back to that study at Harvard where your satisfaction with life or with the work environment is really about the relationships that you have. So it's not just about getting on, it's about a real connectedness which can translate into work performance. Purpose is an interesting variable, and it's about how you fit in with your purpose in terms of the organization's purpose. The problem that I find is that a lot of organizations don't have a purpose, and to make money is not a purpose. Profit is a result of what you do. It's not what you do. So if you can get that right, you will make money, as we saw with Southwest and with other people, with other organizations. Optimism, mental and physical health is helped by optimism, and it's an important thing to measure. If everybody's pessimistic in your business, it's not going to have a very positive outcome in terms of the people that you deal with. Work satisfaction, are you happy with what you're doing? Does it, or do you just do it because it's a job? Do you just work to put food on the table? Or is there something really that satisfies you in the workplace and where we are employed? Value speaks to how valued are you, which I think is probably one of the most important variables that we've identified in our study. There's a lot of, I hear so often from businesses, you're just an employee, you're just a number, or, you know, you just work here. And to not feel cared for or valued, I think is probably one of the biggest problems that we have in the work environment, and so a very, very, very important variable. Trust is another one that's come through very strongly. We have to trust people that we work with and work for. Leisure, and I look at colleagues who I work with, and I know, all of us push the 18 hours, marking students, stuff, setting tests, doing whatever. But a good organization will force leisure time. They will make people take that break. And we took a group of students to Germany. I took them the year before. And it's actually become law in some of the European countries that you are not allowed to access your work emails after hours. You're not allowed to access them over the weekend because they've realized the importance of refreshing people and giving people, forcing people to have leisure time so that they can recharge or re-energize themselves, which of course leads to the work-life balance in terms of how balanced is it, how important or how, what are the demands that are placed and are they reasonable and can they be done? So what can we do with this research? And I've already done quite a lot of happiness work with companies. The first thing is to evaluate happiness in organizations and actually go in, whether it's an organization or an institution, be it public or private, and actually measure the state of the employees. What do they feel about working there? Do they feel that they're trusted? Do they feel that they're cared for? And all the variables that I highlighted. The next thing that we do is we develop interventions to improve workplace happiness and then assist in that implementation, because invariably it's a bit of a mind changer that you have to get people to start thinking differently to work along these models. But ultimately, we developed a maturity model where companies can be measured. And at level 1, if you want to get to level 2, and there are a lot more levels than this, but what interventions need to happen and how can you do that to change the way that your organization actually works. So there are a lot of applied things that, as I say, come out of this research. Some of the work that's been done she is here, I can't see, she's at the back. Claudine Fenter did work in the veterinarian space. I don't know if any of you know, but the veterinary profession has the highest suicide rate. So there was a call, there's been a lot of work done in other parts of the world, but nothing in South Africa. So this was really of great value to places like Onderstepoort, and they've actually asked Claudine to go and help them develop a module on their veterinary science degree to start bringing these happiness factors into the work. Neil did work in banking, where we looked at one of the big banks and measured the happiness levels there. Michael Elliott, he looks like he's on police file. It's the photograph that he sent me. But we did some substantial work in the physiotherapist sector, but not the physiotherapists employed in the public sector, but those employed in the private sector, which really brought out some great results. This we published in a top journal in, towards the end of last year. Andrew Corwan, who unfortunately passed away, did work with engineers, and what we're building this body of knowledge so that we can start making some ideas. Currently, I'm working with Wayne in the construction industry. We're also working with Arms Corps. Dani, the statistician, said to me, do you think Arms Corps people could ever be happy? So I'll let you know. We've got a fairly big study going on in manufacturing, telecommunications businesses, motor car dealerships, and then we've done some exploratory work just with employed South Africans to use as a baseline and say, well, this is what South Africans say and this is what happens at Arms Corps, to do some comparative research across that. We've developed a number of models, but this was our original conceptual model, and you'll see that it has more variables than the ones that I've shared with you. We put classism in, South African pride, and trust in this case was, do you trust institutions? Do you trust the education system? Do you trust the government? And in some of the work we've done that, and so it's a process of refining where we will actually end. So this was the happiness model for the South African employed people. We did exploratory factor analysis, confirmatory factor analysis, and structural equation modeling. And this was the final model where we saw factors loading onto other factors and some of them becoming intermediate variables into the ultimate dependent variable of happiness. If we look at the veterinarians, the same thing after structural equation modeling, the conceptual model changed, where work satisfaction and social relationships became not independent variables, but the whole model changed. And then the engineers, we had similar things in terms of factors loading onto each other. And every study that we've done has given more insight and more information. And so, as I say, we're building a bigger and better picture from this. The most important learnings from this research are simple. They're very simple, in fact, but they seem to be missed by most people. And maybe this is because happiness seems to be an elusive subject, but I hope after I'm finished with my talk tonight, but you will understand that good scientific research can be done in this area. So I asked the question is, are your employees happy? And do you actually know or not? I look at, there are a lot of business people in the room, obviously a lot of fellow academics. But the problem here is that leadership need to understand the concept. Happiness or employee, I don't know, well-being or whatever, is not an HR function. This is a way of managing and a way of leading. Because, and there's a lot of research actually done by people in the accounting area who have strongly shown that your most valuable stakeholders in business and institutions are your employees. They are the number one that you should be looking after. And as I said, with the simpleness of the concept, probably makes it difficult. If we look at Herb Kelleher, the visionary leader behind Southwest Airlines, he said, the best way to get the best out of employees is to care about them and value them. If employees are treated correctly, they treat the outside world correctly. The outside world uses the company's products again, and that's what makes shareholders happy. So it's about looking at things slightly differently. A happy workforce is more engaged, creative, and more focused, increasing the overall productivity of a company. Simon Sinek, in his book, Leaders Eat Last, understood the importance of how you treat the people that work for you. So as I said earlier, this is not purely an HR function. It should be part of your vision, like it is in the United Arab Emirates. It should be about the way that you behave. The implications for leadership and management are to focus on how your employees feel about what they are doing, even more than what they are doing. Invest in relationships with your employees and invest in your employees' physical, financial, and emotional well-being, which is their happiness. They make a strong contribution to corporate financial performance, and as I mentioned earlier, the work that Debussy did in 2012 concluded that they are the most important stakeholder in your business. So as researchers, we willingly go and study other groups. We knock on doors and say, please, big business, won't you let us in, and can we do this? But we seldom take time to look at our own profession or our place of employment. So I ask the question, maybe the time has come for us to look at some happiness in this institution. I thank you.